All right, welcome everybody to our January 2026 Self-Management USA call. We are here today at Banger Sausage and Beer Garden with Ben Siegel and Albert Gonzalez, and we are going to be talking about their case study. I want to introduce real quick my colleague, Kat Higgins, long proponent of Teal, Agile, and self-management.
And this is my co-founder, partner, and aspiring best friend, Dom. He lives in North Carolina with his beautiful wife and lovely kids. And we work together here at Self-Management USA and on our own Stick with Alignment Foundry. So both of us are here trying to learn more about self-management.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kat. So just for anybody who's been here, we are recording this. We are going to be putting this up on our LinkedIn page and our Hilo community. We're going to be setting the first 25 minutes for, kind of you gentlemen to have the stage, might have some roll into question and answer from there. And just move it all over into more of a community freewheeling discussion at that point. When anybody is welcome to raise their hand and, quick time box questions, we'll share it there. And yep. I think we're ready to get started. So I'm going to stop sharing and just,
Sounds good. All right, guys. So if you were visiting your restaurant, knowing what you do know, what would you want us to know about why did you choose self-management? How does it benefit you guys? Why not give it up?
It's a good question. Why have we chosen self-management and how does it benefit us and why not give it up?
Also a really long question.
It's a long question, but listen, that gives us a lot of different directions to
Whatever you
go.
want.
So look, I think, for myself, Ben and I have two very different life experiences that brought us to restaurants, right? And different experiences within those restaurants. I came up in kitchens my whole life. I started cooking at a very young age in hotels and got deeper and deeper into it. Eventually found a place for quite a while in the high-end fine dining arena, a lot of Michelin-starred restaurants, and that's really what I focused on. And there was a lot of satisfaction in that, in creating things at that level, and executing at that level was really, it meant a lot. It felt good. What didn't feel good was the way we got there, right? And particularly as somebody who came from the kitchen side of fine dining. For a long time, that culture has been really, really toxic. And it was not only a command and control, it was aggressive and at times violent, abusive, verbally, physically, all these things. But when you're in that water, when that's where you're swimming, it seems okay because we're all swimming in it. And this is just how work feels. Not in a proud way, but I took that philosophy for a good chunk of my career. Which was, if I yell a little bit louder, I bet you they'll do it this time. And if I'm a little bit firmer, they'll do it. And if I slam my head a little bit stronger, that noise will shake everybody and get them to do the thing. And again, did it not work? It did not work. It never felt good. It was never, and I knew there was a problem because.
By did not work, do you mean you had financial success?
Yeah, my restaurants ran well. Our food quality was great.
Okay.
Those metrics were right there. People weren't happy. People didn't feel appreciated. I didn't feel good. And the way I found out, what really occurred to me that there was a problem was when I was really able to hone in on that, man, I have to completely change who I am from when I leave work and when I come back to work. Because the person I was at work was just somebody that I was unwilling to be around my friends, my family. And in fact, a lot of it was hiding that person, right? I don't want people to know how I talk to this kid because, man, what would they think? If they were in the kitchen, though, they'd understand it. They'd know I didn't really mean it. It was okay. But kind of going through that experience and feeling that and realizing man, I don't want to live two completely separate lives. I don't want to be two completely different people. I just kind of want to be me, right? And I want to feel proud and good about that throughout my day, no matter what I'm engaged in. So I had a lot of that. And I was looking for ways to do it before I came back to Bangers. I say back because I started here many years ago and came back, thankfully, a little bit over 3 years ago now. And, when I came back, I knew Ben had always, he always cared about people. He always wanted this place to be a good place for people to work. And it drove so much of his decision-making and behavior. And sometimes not the best decisions from it, but it all came from the right place. But I knew that I could probably be happier here and I could find that balance here more than I could anywhere else. So we started working together, and it came here. Ben introduced me to a lot of literature and things that, I had been practicing a little bit and trying to learn, but with his expertise in it, or at least knowledge of it, and then our joint engaging, it was really when we read Reinventing Organizations together was like.
Roughly when was that?
Well, yeah, I mean,
just about 3 years ago.
Were you doing it already when he came back?
So, I mean, it was my third read through of the book. But it was, I think that there's an interesting element with self-management where, I think it requires an owner that's willing and wants to do it.
Yeah.
And, again, you get to the end of Reinventing Organizations, it's like you need that, and then you just got to start, right? And I think it's a little bit of an understatement because you're really unleashing an incredible amount of chaos, or you have the potential to unleash an incredible amount of chaos into the organization. And so I do think that there's an element of really solid operations that's required. And it was one of our great learnings was, that it really is a stage by stage evolution, and you need to be a healthy version of each stage before you allow yourself to evolve. And a lot of times that evolution is really what feels like a de-evolution, is you're dismantling certain parts of it. And then it's sort of that compared with sort of the introduction of ideas and allowing those to take hold. And again, it's that evolutionary yearning that also ultimately comes about at sort of the management level and then the individual level, where this becomes much easier. And when you try to force feed these things upon the organization, which was really the way I was going about it in my sort of floundering attempts for a while, is like I'd finally convinced, one of my managers to, hey, let's do this, but really unskillfully, without any regard for kind of the hourly team. And so it was Albert ultimately coming on, kind of reading some of these books, being like, wow, this scares the absolute shit out of me. But mostly because I think it's right, and I think this is the right way. And it, when we talk about this on just our conversation, but it's a spiritual practice as much as anything else, right? And really where it leads you and what it forces you to look at and what it forces you and requires of you to let go of in order for it to fully manifest itself. And so in Albert, I really found that partner where it was like, hey, I'm really willing to let a lot of these things go. Can you help this not all burn down though? And you still want it to be more than just a thought exercise, but really have that beneficial, the benefits of the organization that can and do come as the output of these organizational shifts. But you got to know how to do it in orange before you can know how to do it in teal. And that's really what Albert brought to the table in a big way, in addition to a shared desire of man, let's do this thing.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And yeah, a big part of it was, so it was seeing it, right? I can see this thing. I can see these teal organizations. I can see, it's like, wow, that's it. But, the foundation in a lot of ways was laid, because this restaurant has always been really rooted in its core values, and the core values led us there, right? It led to self-management. If you read them and look at them and you discuss them the way we discuss them on a regular basis, you can see that, man, if we're going to live that value to its fullest, it's self-management. It's one of the ways to get there. So knowing that we had the cultural foundation around it was comforting, because it was like, okay, we have something stable we can lean on. But for us, part of that was, well, as important as the culture always has been to us and always will be to us, culture in business, in my mind, is a lot of times treated as sort of like the more the higher need. You'll get to it.
Right.
And I think that makes sense. And I think part of where we were, and Ben alluded to it, was man, we didn't, as a restaurant, as an organization, hadn't met our base needs. We weren't executing good service, right? Our food quality wasn't there. Our ticket time, and none of it was it was atrocious. By no means, it was all good, right?
But you're in Austin.
But we're in Austin. It has to be good.
Very high.
It's great, right? Yeah. So by focusing on going really heavy into orange, it allowed us to satisfy the organization's base needs, right? So now we weren't putting out fires constantly.
Yeah.
We weren't struggling just to get through service. It allowed us to stop and say, hey, what else can we do? And what we chose to do was dive as deep as possible in the culture. And part of that is like, self-management, I believe, requires strong culture. I think you need people to all be aligned with the direction, the decision-making reasons, the ethos, so that they don't need somebody telling them what they feel. They're part of it. It's the sense and respond of it. So, leaning into the culture for us was huge. And we've spent so much time just diving into that. And then we really stopped and said, our leadership team, which is composed of 6 people, and it was 6 at the time maybe as well, so 6 different people now, we realized, listen, none of this goes anywhere if this room doesn't buy into this. Because the people who traditionally in hierarchy hold the levers of power, man, if some of them are not wanting to let go of those levers, self-management can't happen. It can't be actualized. So we spent a lot of time after he and I were really aligned. I remember it was in his office, Ben asked me one day, I don't think it was a really pivotal day for us, but he asked, he's like, hey, if you were going to go do this on your own, and I opened up a restaurant once, didn't quite work out, but he asked, he's like, if you're going to go do it alone again, would you do this from the beginning? And it was such an immediate, absolutely. In fact, boy, what I would have given to start from self-management, right? Because wow, the transition seems a lot more difficult than trying to start from there. But there was no hesitation, right? It was an obvious, of course, this is it.
Nice.
And it'd be easier if we could start from there. But the transition is the journey, right? And it's part of all the learnings, and it's what's led to a lot of the good and a lot of the bad. And we've experienced, Ben and I are certainly not sitting here from a place of we figured out self-management. But let me tell you about it. Man, we've probably failed more than we've succeeded in it, I'd say. And the amount of learning we have, and if nothing else, what we've grown is a tolerance for failure, an acceptance of it. And we can have these bad moments, and this whole team, for the most part, I say for the most part, because we all can find ourselves in a negative place every now and then, right? But we all get to the place pretty quickly of man, what did we learn from it? It's okay that it went south. What did we learn? How do we do it better next time? And I think, one of our biggest adventures and our biggest experiments that did not work out well at all, and part of that
Real
was...
quick before we start that story, I forgot to mention, if you have questions, you can either put them in the chat or raise your hand, and then we'll get to a queue once we're kind of at a pausing place where we can take questions from anybody. So feel free to put those in the chat or raise your hand. Thank you.
Great. One of the things that we looked at for quite a while and still talk about was, the tip model and how we don't love it. We don't love how that works, and we don't love the connotations. We don't love the unpredictability it creates for our team. And look, we're also very fortunate that we're a busy restaurant in a good place in town, and our team does really well. But that really well can vary so drastically that we wanted to address that. We saw a way.
Well, and just one thing I'd add, right? I think there's another element of this that I think, presents a unique challenge of restaurants that want to engage in self-management is if you look at it from an idea perspective, just from sort of Maslow's basics, right? You're sort of getting into the world of self-actualization. And so you need your basic needs met before you can engage in that level of thought. And so that was a lot of the conversation as well, was man, well, if there's no certainty, if they're just earning it in this way. And so this was sort of an attempt for us to, again, look at the foundational things that allow for these ideas to flourish. And so this was at the root of that.
Yeah, you can pursue mental health better when you're not worried about paying rent.
Right.
It's really hard to worry about that when you don't know how you have food.
Right.
Yeah, or even to give a shit about these cool ideas. It's great, but can I pay my rent? You know what I mean? And so it's that kind of stuff where you're not dealing with cynicism that, quite frankly, is well founded.
Yeah.
So in that we sat down and we talked to our team, and we came up with what at the time sounded like we were going to change the world right there. This restaurant was going to do everything, and we instituted a QR ordering system, and it had the opportunity to let our service team could help the guest on QR. And our thought was, man, this allows one server to cover a ton more area, way more efficient. we could have less of them on. And the reason for that is we could pay them a great wage. And what we did is we got rid of the tip model. We went to a service charge across the board, 20%, and a standard hourly wage for our previously tipped team members. And that hourly wage was aggressive. Our servers were making $35 an hour. Our bartenders were up $37 an hour. Plus, they were still getting tips a much lower rate than they were previously, but they were often bringing in $39, $42 an hour as an average. And that extended, right? Our support staff was in the 20s. Everybody all of a sudden went from $213 an hour plus tips to pay rates that it's like 40 hours a week, man. That's money.
I can pay my rent.
You can pay rent. And that was the goal. And man, did it just like epically fail in what sitting here now are so many predictable ways, and also so predictable how we got there. And look, the end of the story is the problem was that me, Ben, and a couple of our leadership team figured this all out. We figured it all out. And then we went downstairs and we're like, you guys, you don't have to worry about anything because we figured it all out. Just do this.
Good news.
Thank you. See you later. Let me know if you need anything. Right. And there was more to it than that. But ostensibly, there wasn't more to it than that.
Self-management. Management.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, yes, but except for this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the exception making that you can engage
That
in
was
that
it.
really is compromising everything you're doing.
I command you to think for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this time you thought wrong. So let me change how you think about it.
Right,
Think about
right.
it. So it's like, but again, and so look, we instituted it, and what we didn't do was talk at all about, the change of paradigm and what, because like the service our team was giving now was completely different than what they were used to. It was also completely different than what we previously had described as like the bar of success. And more importantly, what they cared about, the bar of success they wanted to meet. And that's what really tossed it off. And, we had it throughout the summer. We went around 3.5, 4 months with it. We burnt an insane amount of money because mathematically it didn't work, guys. So even had it worked for everybody, we probably would have
Your
figured something
financial
out.
forecasting was off?
Yeah, it was way off. But it was also, we implemented that at a time we took an unexpected dip in sales. So that was impactful. And our initial model didn't quite work out. We needed more people. And again, so either way, we run this for a couple months, and our team goes from really, really high morale to slightly lower, to very low.
Mutinous.
It is contentious. And we were in this place where the contention was happening in our pre-shifts, our huddles, and we weren't having the open conversation. And, candidly, I got very frustrated with that. And I was like, why isn't anybody coming to talk to me? I'm always open. Come talk to me. Just not talking to me. I'll wait till somebody talks to me. Just like, man, that's silly. And they did. And then we weren't talking. And then, and then it was just this seething and this animosity. And really, we got to Oktoberfest. We throw a 3-day long Oktoberfest here. That is bonkers. It's the busiest we are throughout the year. Standing room only. It's crazy. It's one of the best weekends of the year. And we got there and we had record sales and all those things. And man, I remember the end of that Friday, I was back behind the bar back and washing some dishes, just trying to help the team. And I looked up and the look on the team's face was shattering. It was shattering, right? Because these kids love coming to work. They hated it. They hated their job. So disappointing.
Yeah, but I think the good news, right, is I can remember a conversation, on the tail end of that, Albert and there's a balcony off this building we're in right now, and we're sitting there, and it's just like, all right, we agree this isn't working. And then it was this, look, because it's like ultimately all you can do really is model the behavior that you want others to ultimately follow. And where I'm incredibly proud of is the amount of time we gave the opportunity, right? And it was a stunning failure, and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars for again, a single unit restaurant, right? So significant, but we accepted those losses. We allowed them to happen. We gave the experiment an opportunity to work. And then we sat down and looked at it, and I think from a really deep place understood why it didn't work, right? And a lot of the things that I've said already on this call were born out of that experience. And it was like, okay, well then here's the new plan, right? It's not about going forwards. It's actually about going backwards. Yep. It's about going back to this other evolutionary phase, really rooting ourselves in there and becoming a very structured organization so that we can break the structure down. And it's a very perverse thought, but one that we allowed ourselves to go to. And then again, as an owner, right? Like it's a willingness to let those things happen. It's not looking and saying, well, again, that didn't work like we talked about, and it needs to work perfectly. We had this conversation around like, you look at regular capitalism, right? Well, it's filled with mistakes and errors, and you pivot and you change, and right, like the system works, but like there's this assumption that you're going to try something new, and if it doesn't work perfectly, then you need to go back to an old paradigm, right? And so
So what was the new? How did you evolve beyond?
So we evolved to devolve, right? Like, so we evolved by not saying, hey, this didn't work. What we said was like, it didn't work because the team, it wasn't what the team wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, self-management is just that. It's
So the shift was listening to the team.
The shift was listening to the team. What the team wanted at that time was a traditional restaurant. And so really what we ultimately had to do was create a traditional restaurant and then work at the level of idea, work at the level of mind before we got to the level of operations, right? And so that's when we started to really institute like the 15 Commitments to Conscious Leadership classes, really began to kind of more formalize the ways and kind of deepen the ways that we use the core values, continue to refine the core values, and kind of lean into those things like that, where all of a sudden people start to feel kind of tangible shifts in their broader lives as they start to institute things like radical responsibility, kind of really leaning into curiosity, a lot of these things that begin to shift people's perspectives, allow them to take an empowered look in their lives. And then it comes from a desired place. I want this now. And then from there, you can have operations meet the desire and the shift in consciousness that your team is going through. And then you have this iterative cycle, right? Because ultimately the organization it's the sum total of the people in the organization. And that sort of works in these interesting ways. But again, in a lot of ways, I think that's where we are right now. And I think what's challenging, especially for people that are used to looking at things to a certain mindset and frame, is the time scale often required for these things to take place, right? Like that conversation happened, was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago?
2.5 years ago.
Yeah, it's about 2.5 years ago.
You're not going to know that it doesn't work in a month.
But in a lot of ways, I feel like we are right now, after 2.5 years of that conversation, at a place where I believe the gestation period has been long enough where we can now start to take some more extreme measures, right? Which in a lot of ways we're on the heels of. And it's just that patience, it's that acceptance of, it just takes time. It just takes time. And it's a lot of work, and then rapid change, I believe, on the heels of that.
So I do want to check and see if there's questions, but really quick, I want to pull on, this is so different in the room. This is the first time we broadcast in the room from somebody who was presenting, and there's no missing the emotional, like the authenticity of connection and the sense of responsibility or sense of ownership of wanting to empower the people. Like even when he brought up the issue, I just watched you go, like how did it change the trust level in the organization for you guys to go back after having failed and say we failed to your own people?
It's a great question. And look, I think in the end of this, it increased it.
I would think.
Because I think the way we went back to it, right? That it wasn't, we didn't try and like, let's brush it under the rug and pretend like this didn't happen and go back to normal. We talked about it, right? We stood up and we gave all the facts around it. We talked about how it wasn't financially working. We talked about the errors we made as leaders in how we dropped this on the team. I think one of the
And your
biggest,
ability to forgive others when they make mistakes and
100%.
fail, yeah.
And like the
Because
team,
what are you gonna say?
the team did that.
Right,
They
yeah.
forgave us, right?
Oh, I'm
And,
so sorry.
and they trusted us, and we all went right back to work together, right?
Yeah.
And I do think, we still have a lot of people that were around then. And one of the interesting things, so I think there's two things that I really pulled out of that whole experience. One is, self-management, leadership. For me, like, one of the parts of being a leader in self-management is really just working to help define the frameworks that we all work in, and not defining them, but help define them, being a point of resource, being a point of advice. You guys are working on something. Let's talk let me know if I can assist. I have a skill set that can become your skill set if it helps you. And we didn't do a lot of that, right? We were basically like, just do it this way and it'll be fine. So we didn't really give that clear structure, so they couldn't self-manage to know what the clear end goal was. So I think providing that, having those available, not even providing, but having those available, creating those frameworks is huge in self-management. And then the other thing that was the real big takeaway is you get more than a bite at the apple. As long as you're honest, as long as
You
you're
get more
doing,
than, what was that?
you get more than one bite at the apple.
Oh, yeah.
As long as you're doing things in integrity and taking your responsibility. Again, it was so easy to walk into that and just be like, I have responsibility to take care of it.
Yeah.
I made decisions. I made
But with
mistakes.
humility.
Yeah. And like, I'm sorry for them. And I'm also okay with them.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's what happened, and that's where we grow from. It was tough.
Can I add anything to that? How it changed you maybe or didn't?
Yeah, I think it's human evolution,
Yeah.
right? So again, it is a, it is very much the framework through which and the lens through which I'm looking at all of this stuff, right? And so it is all of those opportunities to take a look and say, oh man, like this behavior was really driven from this other place. Is there something that I can let go of there, right? And it is this process of just kind of letting go, right? And in that is where kind of these new modes of operation kind of emanate from. And so I don't, I can't really calculate all the ways that I've changed. I've changed every day.
Yeah.
What's really interesting about that experiment is today, right now, if you go down there in the middle of a busy service, some of what we were hoping to force upon the team, and this is the way to do it, they're doing it now. And it's not because they saw it made sense and their job lent into it. Their passion, their pride made them, it was like, oh, this is a good thing I can do. But that's how we could have gotten there. Right. And like, what I imagine is over
in
years,
a safe constraint. Yeah.
by having it evolve to it. Because again, now we have some positions that have been created by the team.
Your events.
And I mean, we had a gentleman, Brady Goodrich, who's our head of chief hospitality, head of hospitalitarian. And most of his days spent just walking around the beer garden, popping in on people, like helping them out with what they need, which is the thing we were trying to do. But we were so ham-fisted about it that it was like, it didn't make sense. And now when the operators themselves are the ones figuring it out, when Brady's down there, when Bolton, all of his teammates are down there just figuring out the best way to service the guest, they're finding that far better than we thought we had found it.
Yeah.
And guess what? It's taking longer, and that's great.
But that makes it less
great.
volatile.
Yes,
right?
it's less volatile, and it feels good.
Yeah, I'd love to go to the question. I did want to mention that Albert and Ben gave us a tour beforehand. It was clear the ownership at every level that your staff was taking that have excellence. I mean, it was so clean, it was so organized. Everybody was excited to meet us. So you can see how it trickles through the culture.
With and without them. So I snuck in without them the first day that I got here.
Which I love, by the way.
And heard from all of these people talking about how it's more like hanging out with their friends. And they also talked about the investment in literally just forming human connections, like sort of off work events that you guys have for your employees to help them bond and create safety and trust and understanding. And we heard about that 7 ways Sunday.
We love that.
All right, we have a question from Matt Spar. He's from the Teal team, the Teal Landscape Report, which is a lot of great research there. The Teal team's research has found the majority of self-management companies are likely professional services and manufacturing. What have you learned about adapting self-management to food service and retail? where you have shift workers, entry-level jobs, customer service, etc.
Hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, you're pioneering in many ways.
I think I think there's a particular book that I found that has helped a lot in this teal dots in an orange world. And that's very much so. I think what I've learned is like, so one of the practices to lead us there, which is this understanding that it's evolutionary, right? So it just doesn't happen in these big sweeps, but there are certain sectors of this business that will likely always be somewhat orange and somewhat not self-managed, right? The recipe for bratwurst,
Well, maybe it works that way.
right? And the recipe for bratwurst has to be the same.
Mhm.
It's got, so it's not, there isn't a lot of variation. There's not creativity and all that. But being honest about that with the team and having those conversations. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think for me, that's one of the big learnings was just that, like, it can't happen in every department all at the same rate. Some are a little bit more likely to lend into self-management more fluidly, and some require a little bit of orange, and some require more
Some
time.
don't need it.
Yeah,
And some don't need
I
it.
speak to that in no rules also, like, do you really want a,
Create an accounting department.
get an accounting department that just kind of does whatever they want? I don't think you do. I don't think you do.
Well, one thing I do want to, when you explained to us how the beer selection works. Maybe that might be something interesting to tell.
Yeah, sure. So since the beginning, we have had the committee, which is it's a group of several people. Our general manager / main beer guy, Steve, he leads it. And then
But I'll say this, he grew into a management position and was not in a management position when
Yes.
he was leading that.
Yes.
It's worth noting.
Steve leads it, not necessarily because of his position in the org, but Steve leads it because he is the most erudite in the subject, right? Like, I mean, as he's a brilliant beer mind, so it allows him to provide that resource.
Okay.
But every Tuesday, that group of folks, and it's open, like you can just ask to be a member and you'll get brought in, but it's hourlies, we got cooks in there, we've got managers, so but they come in every Tuesday, they sit down
You
and
cooks taking your beer?
they can be part of it, absolutely.
Okay.
Because you know what? They drink beer too. So it's great perspective for
More
what's
than
out there.
most.
Right, but more than most. But they'll sit down and what they'll do is they'll bring out a big black bus top, set it on one of the beer garden tables, and in there is the countless amount of samples that beer vendors have brought by for us that week, right? And they'll sit down, they'll order some food, they'll pop a can, they'll have some tastings, and they'll talk about it. And through that process, they'll come up with a couple winners. They're like, we love this one, we love this one, we love this one. We'll order them, and they make it on the wall. And that it's so much better than I've worked at a lot of restaurants where you get hired and it's like by the end of the week you need to pick your pocket wine, your pocket beer, your pocket salad, your pocket appetizers, which are just code word for learn one of these things really well. So anytime somebody asks, you just give them that one.
Mm.
You don't need to really like it or not. Just learn how to sell it. Go team. Where the beer here is different. Like they care and they talk about it and they have the opportunity to impact it. So it's even more important to them. You'll notice if you go to our bars, you'll see big letterboards there. They have team picks. So what is Albert drinking? What is Ben drinking? What is Bolton drinking? What is their favorite beer on the wall? And man, they get excited to talk about it. It's not put on. It's not performative. They can't wait to tell you why they love stupid, silly sour number 69, right? They can't wait. What a gift for us.
Yeah.
Like when you're sitting down and the person who you're interacting with is passionate and committed and excited, you're in it, right? Like I can't wait to spend more time with this person. And it makes a huge difference. And like, we're very fortunate that that's our team from top to bottom. I mean, we got chefs running food, hitting tables. We got servers helping out in kitchens. Everybody just wants to do the job.
And I think, look, I think going back to Matt's question, right? Like there's, in a lot of ways, I think we are in uncharted territory. And so there's an element of having to kind of pick your spots. And so, Albert, why don't you tell them about how we handle our comps?
Yeah.
And then also this story, what would be interesting is like the rejection of the system initially and kind of where we stand today.
So typically for restaurants, if you're going to take something off, if you're going to take something off somebody's bill, I, as the server, have to go to my manager and like, hey, table 32, they didn't like the steak. Can you please take that off their bill? And then go talk to them to let them
I
know.
noticed that.
Yeah.
I got a free drink and I was like, do they know who I am?
Yeah. So
Like, they don't
around
be visiting this
2.5
restaurant.
years ago, we broke the system, and what we said was, I trust you. That was the gist of it. We trust you guys to make good decisions. So moving forward, we've taken the manager code off the comp authorization.
Nice.
You can each comp. You have the power to comp everything you sell that day. But then what we did right this time, we set frameworks around it.
Mhm.
Like, hey, the idea behind this is
Financial
this.
transparency.
This is what we want to, this is the intent, this is what we want to do
Right.
here. And we were also very clear, like, listen, abuse of this, it's gonna result in termination. Because we're giving all the trust. So like, if you're not sure if what you're doing is right or not, ask somebody. Go talk to
Because you're not just giving away the value of the beer, you're damaging the trust of the other people.
100%.
That you work with.
Well,
Yeah.
and we took a note from the Netflix book here too, where it was like, really your litmus test is this in the best interest of the restaurant or
Yes.
not? If you can explain how your action was in the best interest of the restaurant, odds are you did the
Fine.
right thing.
Yeah.
And again, and so this was
Love
this
that.
was a great step into self-management of you guys are gonna make the decisions out there. If you don't think that Dominic liked his beer, comp it. If you think that Dominic was having a great time and having an even better time if you comped a beer, do that. So we did this thinking like
It's gonna be
they're
great.
gonna be so excited. Everybody's gonna love this. And whole scale rejection of the concept. People are like, what do you mean? And what we saw was our comps just plummeted because they were like, I guess we're not comping. I'm not doing it. And I'm not gonna ask somebody about it because that's dangerous. I'm gonna lose a job. And it took weeks, if not months of
Time frame wise, this is prior to the other failure that
Yes.
we talked about. This was
Okay.
actually one of the first, when he came on.
So
it
the
was like
trust was not built up.
at all.
Yeah.
The trust
Yeah.
and the knowledge, nothing was
Nothing.
there.
So yeah, like it took months to really about 2 months to get people to start using it.
Yeah.
And they did. And guess what? We have not ever
It
had to
was shocking.
discipline anybody over it. Our comps went up to the area we wanted them to. We felt they were too low. We wanted to get them a little bit higher. We wanted to extend more hospitality like that. We wanted to right our wrongs. And now it happens seamlessly.
Yes, so the person that comped me, I was so surprised because he'd only been there for 8 months. And I was like, and he never left the bar. He's like, yeah, that was, because I was asking about the business and whatever. And I think he was, apparently felt
Yeah.
that was an appropriate situation, which I would agree.
Feels like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the subject of benefits, so you learned from these two experiences, when people come to self-management, I even mentioned self-management, does it work? Does it work? So what are some of the other benefits you see? And I know that we had a conversation about attrition, for example, and how that went down in your kitchen. So I'd love to learn about that, but any other major benefits that you guys have seen? We talked about sort of intangible things, but anything more tangible? Attrition numbers are big, like it's a big deal,
Yeah, Tricia.
especially in restaurants. That's huge in restaurants.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing that I would say is, and I'd say something that I have the, sort of a direct hand in, right, is like, again, there are certain mental models that are required for these ideas to take hold in mass. They need to take hold at the individual level. And those mental models and ideas will absolutely change people's lives for the better. And so a lot of the unintended consequences of a lot of that work, and we talked about this prior to that, is, we have these all team meetings and we hand out these shirts for different years. And I remember, like, I get to these 3-year shirts and I'm giving out, I think, 4 shirts, and I want to write the same thing for all 4 of these people. And it was all around, like, I can't believe how much you've changed in the 3 years you've been here. But also then realizing, like, man, I don't know that I would have written that 6 months ago. So it was sort of like 2.5 years to kind of get to this point. And then you're looking at these people that are just like, they're overcoming anxiety. They're working their way through their depression. They're all of a sudden, they've lost a tremendous amount of weight. They're just like, there's just all of these things as they stop blaming others and they lean into their own responsibility and they start to take responsibility for their lives and they realize their own power. And like, as you can start to do those things for those people, and like, it's just, you have wholer humans now part of your organization. And so the byproduct of that is better workers, right? But really it's about better human beings.
And a better
Yeah.
team.
A
Healthier.
better team, yeah.
Healthier
And so
people.
like that to me is the most profound thing, like when we can really lean into those underlying concepts.
Awesome.
Any other?
Yeah, no, great response there. We have another question from Erica. Thank you, Erica, for asking this. How does hiring work? Do you pre-qualify people for mindset? And is it hard to bring new staff members in?
It's a good question. And the answer is yes. Hiring starts regardless of what we're hiring. The first interview has nothing to do with your job and whether you're good at it or not. It is about who are you? Are you a culture fit for us? If you can't make it past that, the rest of it doesn't matter. You can be the best cook in the world. But again, another thing we borrowed from the Netflix No Rules Rules was no brilliant jerks, right? So like your competencies do not earn you a spot on the team. You need to have competencies along with culture match. So for instance, I interview every manager, any salaried manager we hire. I am the first interview for every single one. And we, again, like I've never asked anybody, how do you handle a situation on the floor? Somebody else will ask that question, I'm sure. What we do is we sit down with the core values, kind of talk about each one, explain it, talk about how that's relevant to their day-to-day life. And it's a conversation. And really quickly, we can tend to filter folks out that it's like, this doesn't work for you. And that's okay. You're not a bad person because I have a size 10 shoe. Size 13 shoes are fine. They're garbage for me. Right. So, and in culture to me is a lot like shoes where it's not about good or bad. It doesn't fit you.
Right.
So yeah, all of our hiring is predominantly based on culture. We get to competencies after that. The bright side of that is more, we don't turn over people quite as often. The downside of that is, boy, can it take a long time to hire people.
Yes, it can.
And like, you know, one of the things that we use this phrase quite often, but we have permissed inefficiency. It's okay. Because to do things the right way isn't always necessarily the fastest, cleanest way. And then that goes for both hiring and firing.
Mhm.
Like to get termed here, it's a process because we're going to talk to you. And we're not going to
fire slow.
Yeah, we're not going to exactly. We're not going to scream at you. We're not going to slam our fist, but we're going to say, man, Kat, that thing doesn't line up with our core values. I want to kind of talk to you about how I'm seeing it. I want to see how you're seeing it, but at the end, I want us to know, like, that's the goal. So we want to see growth from there. And you'll have that conversation again and again. And until we can feel like, man, we are in integrity with having given honest opportunities for growth, having provided the tools and the structure for growth. And if we can't get there, that person's not going somewhere.
And look, and it's interesting, right? Because that in and of itself is an iterative process, right? Like Albert was out sick, and so I sat in and sort of mediated a conversation between two back of house employees, and I mean, gosh, it was about a 2-hour conversation, and mostly because like this person that ultimately terminated, like, didn't get it, and I'm just sitting there, I'm trying to explain it in as many ways as I can, and there's a bit of a language barrier there, but I'm like pushing through. And what happened was on the other side of the conflict was one of our best employees. And then I'm talking to her on the back end, and she's like, I am on the verge of quitting. Like, I now do not like my job because this person has been here and has been allowed to be here for however I want to use the word months. I don't know that it was that long, but so we stepped away from that. Like, oh gosh, we almost lost a stellar employee because we wanted to go through this whole rigmarole process, and like there's rightness in that, but I believe we took a good thing too far. And so then we also talked about like the ability, like, because then you talk to the executive chef who was also sitting in the meeting, and it's like, and I'm like, dude, I knew within 5 minutes of sitting down with this guy, like, hey, what is he doing here? Like, because again, you can also go through this well-intentioned culture hiring process and be like, well, one slipped through the cracks, right? Like, and this was a guy that slipped through the cracks, not a bad person, right? Just because you're not a good culture fit doesn't mean you're that person, but you're not values aligned. That's what a culture is. It's a shared value.
So what part do the employees play in the hiring process or firing process?
So I would say that our team probably doesn't play much role in the hiring process at the current time. It's a great idea though. Here's what I would say though, as far as the termination end goes, the organism has antibodies and it's taking care of itself, right? The team has such a high expectation of the other teammates they're going to work with, that when somebody isn't meeting it, and this is the coolest thing ever, but like the two team members Ben was referring to, this didn't happen in silence until they were forced to talk. The woman was actively giving professional feedback to this person, was giving real candor to this person and trying to help them grow. That's happening. And the team is doing that at scale. They're giving each other pointers, they're giving each other feedback. And when that doesn't work, then it can, filter to a manager. But man, like what we've found is when the team
They tried to lift each other.
is kind of like, hey, I think we have a problem, they're usually right? Like they're living it, they're feeling it, and they see it. So we take their word very, very seriously.
Perception matters, whether they're right or wrong. This is almost secondary to whether the
Yes.
team feels like.
Yeah. And so like they play an active role in safeguarding the culture and keeping it healthy.
Does that answer your question, Erica? Anything else?
Awesome.
No, that was
Got it.
great. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, we only have 10 minutes left. I mean, we've got a couple questions left in the chat.
Yeah.
Is that okay to go over them real quick?
Sure.
Okay, we have one from Ria. Ria, thank you for being
You want to
here.
make sure we get to the next events. And and some of the things they talked about, like their values, we have some resources that we've gotten from them. We will be posting those in the community in high-low.
Yeah.
So hopefully you join high-low. If not, after this, we'll give you the recording and links to be able to do that.
Awesome. And I'll drop the future slide up in a second. This one's from Ria. I had the privilege of doing a walkthrough with Albert and Ben. I love the way they're candid and quick, but also helpful with others. It was wonderful. Yeah, same experience. One of the things I observed people were not very comfortable with is feedback in general. How has this feedback culture evolved, given how this is a great enabler of self-management? You kind of answered that a little bit through the last question. Anything you want to add on feedback?
I think it's a great point. And, we've grown, right? And I think what we've seen is we spent, and it was probably right after the time you were here, but we spent 4 months on candor?
When was
5 months on candor?
Yeah, I think we spent 4 or 5 months going through like candor exercises, teaching candor theory, like really instituting like a lot of both Tim Scott's radical candor framework paired with, commitment for the 15 commitments conscious leadership, kind of using kind of the best of both of those models to really teach the leadership team and the broader management team in mass to kind of feed that into the organization. And then again, it's like, it just takes time.
It
And what I'd
does.
say now is it's almost not a concern, right?
Yep.
It's like where, someone comes into the organization and now that we spent, we have the investment of the 4 or 5 months that was about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. Now at this point, it's one module, right? It's 1 month, you come in, you're trained, this is how it's done. And then as you go into the organization, you're like, oh, this is actually how it's done.
Yeah.
Now I've got a framework and it can
Seeing
be
it.
taught in real time versus it's only exists in a classroom until it can come out of the classroom.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it, right? And it just took time. It took time to get to learn how to deliver candor really well. And then once you learned it, we still all stick our foot in our mouths.
It's
every now and
elusive,
then, right?
yeah.
It's elusive. But I do think part of the jam on reception to feedback was, man, when the feedback's not managed really well, I don't think anybody wants to hear it, right? It's difficult to, and you can do it. You can power through and be like, I'm going to take this really negative feedback that's coming at me aggressively and hear it. That's really
Is it
hard.
like a nonviolent communication structure? Do you know what that is?
I do,
Yeah,
but
yeah, familiar with it.
Is
I don't think we've gone to that letter, but what it really is like, it's, listen, I care about you and I got to talk to you about this thing. And both those are at
Context,
the exact same
yeah.
time, yeah.
Relationship context is good. That's
Yes.
good.
well, and I think understanding like, the sort of, again, the energetic footprint of candor and how it is inherently relational, right? And like,
Mhm.
and again, I think one of the things that I really like in the teaching of it is the broader perspective that these skill sets have, right? Because I think that's one of the interesting things when you look at restaurant culture in particular, oftentimes you're talking about a job and not a career, right? And so how do you shift the perspective that people have of this vocation? And a lot of it is the introduction of transferable skills. And so, hey, look, you learn this candor, you're going to have a better relationship with your wife. You're gonna have a better relationship with your kids. You're gonna have a better relationship with your friends, and you're gonna work well and be able to work within your job, within your vocation, and you're gonna be a better human being, right? And so, again, like there's this idea of like withholding that gets introduced in, in the 15 commitments framework, and there's just a lot of powerful models that I think the team dives onto.
That's compassion.
No, it's really
Anything
good.
else? Anybody want to squeeze
One
more?
last question from Doug. You might have answered this. What are the Doug, always great to have you, sir. What are the 2 to 4 core principles that govern Bangers and around which everyone working there needs to align? Yeah, we shared your values. We put those in there.
I mean, and that's them. I think that's them. It's sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
Beliefs.
Yeah,
look,
values.
so the value again, if you look at the values, they're long form, right? And so again, you've got humility, truth, grit, joy, and humanity are kind of the 5 words. Each word has a phrase, and then below the phrase is kind of like 3 paragraphs that kind of speak to it and allow it to be a tool. I would say conceptually, right? Again, we're really right now, because I think you really need a what and why paired with a how. For us, the how is really the 15 commitments at this point. And so I think if you look at kind of the first four commitments, it's this idea of responsibility, leaning into curiosity, this concept of like really feeling your feelings, and then candor would be kind of the 4, I would say, pillars that we are really teaching to and through at this moment in time, all of which can be found within the core values directly.
Where do they come from?
Where do what come
Like,
from?
did you write them? Is it input from the people?
So, man, there's a 12-year history of it, right? And within that 12 years, there has been third-party facilitators that have come in, and it was actually at one point an entire organization-wide input session. There were times when it was just me writing it on my own and just kind of iterating it from my own learnings. It's in this current incarnation of it. It is very much us as sort of a leadership team kind of looking at it. And then also there's
So everywhere.
but part of what we have done a great job is feedback loops. There's so many feedback loops organizationally, right? Not just in kind of the informal ones that come up through the successful implementation of candor as a value. But then again, we've talked about things like League of Justice, right? We've talked like it's just there's those kinds of things where you look at what's coming up and where the organization actually is, and then you can kind of update the values to reflect that.
The only thing I would add is like the other access we have to our team is we've done a really good job, I think, of making it clear, like we're always listening. So if you want to talk, it's always fine to pull any of us aside, right? And like one of my favorite things is when one of our team members comes up, it's like, hey, can I get an hour with you? I have some stuff I want to talk about. It's like, what a gift, right? Like that they're willing to just walk up and ask for some time, and we sit down and like it can go anywhere. Sometimes it's about their personal growth. Sometimes it's about how we're handling something in the restaurant, but they're bringing that to us freely and openly because they don't have fear. Like what our team knows is they want to sit down with me and say, I think this was a really terrible idea. That's going to be okay. Like, let's talk about that. I'm here for it.
That's courageous.
Yeah, and it's courageous, right? So like, there's a lot of thankfulness and belonging cues. I think is a big thing that we lean into, which is like,
For everyone that says it, there's 5 thinking that are,
Yes.
if not,
yes, if you're going to deliver something bad to me, something that is
unless they see that
bad,
it's safe, then you got 5 that are saying it.
yes, I'm going to appreciate that. And that brings it back.
And I want to, and look, I get imagine we're kind of running out of time. And so like, there's something I want to just sort of say and really own very clearly here, right? Like, as Albert said, right? Like nobody is a thing, right? You use the color memes from reinventing organizations, right? And it's always this kaleidoscope. But the fact of the matter is, like, we are a orange organization more than anything right now. But what I think is valuable for the folks that are listening is like, man, it is fucking hard to get into self-management, right? Like I am like a dictatorial, all-powerful owner, and it is all I want in the world. And boy, oh boy, I've been trying this for a long time, and it's very difficult. But what I believe we are, while we are orange, right, and you know, and there's green and whatever, it is, we are actively doing the things that we need to do to set the stage for that evolution. And what I believe we are is an organization that is acting responsibly, that is sensing and responding at a higher level to the other levels of the organization in an active effort to break it apart. And I believe we are sitting on that cusp. And so there's, just want to own that it's like, well, you know, again, like, what about this? What about this? And it's like, oh no, they're actually, we're just kind of doing that. And so it's, I think that's the reality. And I think that in order for self-management to really take hold, it's great if you can start it from the beginning, but what you really need is existing non-self-managed organizations making that transition. And what needs to be normalized is, this is hard. It takes a really long time, and you got to really want it. But if you're willing to accept those three things, then there's a beautiful road in front of you. It's a road we're on. It's a road we've been on for a long time. And if you're on a self-management road, it's one you never get off of.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that was lovely. Thank you. I think that's a good note, and we're at our time box. Thank you, gentlemen, both very much. This has been a great experience seeing here. And there's so many things that we saw that we like, you know, open financials, so many different things that we could just list them off. So we appreciate you being open with your information. I'm going to give a quick plug for our upcoming lineup. So we were here in January, Bangor Sausage. Up next, we have a community panel in February.
A couple people on our call today.
Yeah. So that's really lovely, and it's going to be a really exciting conversation. And then up in March, we have Richard Sheridan from Menlo Innovation, their CEO and chief
Author
storyteller.
of Joy Incorporated, I think.
Yes. Yep. So that's going to be really exciting. And yeah, we'll post the video after this and hope to see you in the community. And thank you for joining
See you
here
soon.
today.
Thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you, guys.